live trainings here. And I want to kick this off by, introducing our partners over here at Legacy. Jennifer Blazer is here. Good to see you, Belzer. Good to see you, Jennifer. We've got Amy here as well too. Amy, lots good to see you, and then Chris Eakin as well too. So, over the course of the last 3 months, our partnership here at Legacy is continuing to develop and grow. And we wanted to make sure that we have not only this call, but 5 others after this, to make sure that we're giving everybody the tools that they need in order to feel, comfortable when they're out there, asking, Mr. and Mrs. Jones about where their retirement is. We want to make sure that you feel, that you have the support, you have the right information, have the right knowledge to feel comfortable and confident, when it comes to asking for people's business, especially on the FIA side. So Jennifer and Amy and Chris, they're going to lead us in a session today, and they're going to talk a little bit about some suitability. They're going to talk a little bit about, the solicitation, the application, a little bit about qualified, non-qualified, what is a replacement, things of that nature. Because at the end of the day, team, we want to make sure that when we are submitting our applications, they're in good order, right? So the more we do, the better job that we do as a team on the front end before we submit them into, Legacy, the better that we know that those are going to be cleaner applications. They're going to get out in a timely manner. So not only does, Mr. and Mrs. Jones get to take advantage of the program that they purchased, quicker, but you as an agent, you also get paid, right? You get your compensation quicker, when those policies are issued. So, excited about the training that we have here today. So I am going to go ahead and turn this over to Jennifer. I'm going to turn it over to Amy, and I'm going to turn it over to Chris. And welcome. Oh, and one more. If you have a question, I want us to utilize the chat for your questions. So if you have a question, go ahead and put it into the chat. I'm going to be monitoring the chat for specific questions. We'll get to all of your questions. We may not get them to them today, right? We'll take a look at them depending on how many we are. We'll go through depending on how much time we have to specifically ask and answer some of those questions. But all of your questions will get answered one way or the other. They may get answered on this call today, or there may be an email communication that we sent out. These will all be recorded as well too, and they'll be housed on our SharePoint as well. And after we're done, you'll get a what we call a process guide or a standard operating procedure guide as well too. So we're going to incorporate those with these trainings as well. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and kick it off to Jennifer, Amy, and Chris. Thank you, team.
Hi there, this is Jen Balzer. How's everybody doing today? Good? Okay, good. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to share my screen so we can go ahead and get started with today's session. Just let me know. Let's see here. Can all of you see my PowerPoint presentation? Okay, good.
We can.
Good. Okay, perfect. So Joe, as Joe is so nice to introduce us today, Amy and I are going to go ahead and talk a little bit about new business solicitation and submission. Obviously, the goal is to increase, in good order ratios and make sure that when we're submitting business the first time, it goes through lickety split and without any issues. So we'll go ahead and get started. First and foremost, one of the most important things to know or to ensure that you have is to make sure your agent licensing requirements have all been met. And so, first and foremost, you need to be licensed in the state that you're soliciting the business, have proper product training completed via LegacyNet, current AML training within the last 2 years, and any annuity suitability and or best interest trainings completed. And so if you do have any questions as to whether or not you have met all of these requirements, you're more than welcome to reach out to AMBA's licensing and contracting team. They can look up that information for you. Our licensing and contracting team at Legacy is also available, and there is a tool on LegacyNet. As I like to say, anytime we're doing these types of trainings, it's always nice to go back to the basics. And so wanted to take just a couple of minutes to talk about qualified types and what is categorized as a non-qualified money and what is categorized as qualified monies. And so non-qualified money is money that has already been taxed. So think of it this way. You know, you work hard for your money, you're paying your income taxes, you put that money in, let's say, a money market account. That money is considered non-qualified. Versus qualified money, which is money that refers to, you know, funds that are in a retirement account that are funded with pre-tax dollars. So monies such as deductions for 401ks or 403b plans. A lot of teachers go with 403b plans for their retirement. And so really qualified types, you know, as described by the IRS, is IRAs, Roth IRAs, 403bs, 401ks, profit sharing plans, and the like. And at AMBA, in your internal resource repository, there is a funding acceptance chart that Legacy has created that does, you know, outline the types of accounts that a Legacy or more specifically Emeritus will accept. You know, whether it's, you know, a Roth IRA conversion. So if you do have any questions with respect to what Emeritus may or may not accept, you can always refer to that funding acceptance chart. So replacement versus non-replacement. And this is where there seems to be, from time to time, a little bit of confusion. So I'm going to try to define it a little bit more clearly for everyone. A replacement is when an annuity or a life insurance contract is canceled or surrendered. And this holds true whether or not you as the agent is involved in the transaction yourself, or if the policyholder goes upon their own volition and surrenders a contract. So once there is the cancellation or the surrendering or the reduction of the cash value of a life insurance or annuity contract, that is considered a replacement. And when you're applying for a new annuity or life insurance contract with those same funds, you do need to report it as such. Now, a non-replacement is really a movement of money that does not involve canceling, surrender, or reducing the cash value of an annuity or life insurance contract. So think of it this way: your checking accounts, your savings accounts, your money market, CD, brokerage accounts. That is typically the investment vehicle for those non-replacement funds. And if an application in some instances, part of the money might be coming from a life insurance or annuity contract, and maybe let's say they want to add a CD in there as well. If the application involves both, you know, a life insurance and or annuity replacement, as well as funds from a money market account, the application needs to be categorized as a replacement as a whole. So Amy, I didn't know if you wanted to jump in here and maybe talk a little bit about statement review and how important that it is to get the statement ahead of time during the solicitation of the potential application, and to ensure that you fully understand what the client has and what's being moved or replaced.
Sure. So, you know, when you're going and meeting with your client and, you know, they have this certain account, you know, you want to see if they have the most recent statement for this account they want to transfer. If they don't, you know, it's a good idea. Maybe they have some online access you can go look at, or you need to make a phone call to the company to verify. And all these things should be verified. You know, is it qualified, non-qualified? What kind of account is it in? If you've got a statement, you want to be checking who the annuitant is, who the owner is. Is it joint? Is it single annuitant, joint owner? What combination? You want to be checking the tax qualified type. And then you want to start getting into the values, the current accumulation value, the surrender value, and then breaking that down into, are there surrender charges? Is there a market value adjustment on the contract? And if there is it a positive or a negative? If there is a bonus recapture fee, enhanced benefits, specifically, income riders or death benefits, and then any fees or charges on the contract. So those are the main things that you're going to want to be looking at when you're talking to your client, to review if these funds should be, how they can be moved to Emeritus.
Okay.
And I think Jen's got some examples coming up here.
Yeah, I do. So we're going to just take a couple of minutes to go over a couple of examples so that, everyone can kind of see the differences on how, certain aspects of an account may be communicated differently depending on the carrier. So, for example, here we have, an annuity that is, invested with Nassau. PHL Variable Insurance Company. And so for purposes of this training or this meeting, we've redacted all the non-public personal information. But as you can see here, there's a contract number, there's an owner and an annuitant field, and that's where Amy was just talking about. It's very important to pay special close attention to those to make sure that, we're transferring funds like for like. But moreover, as you go down the statement, it's really important to really review the statement and understand what's being communicated. So as you can see here, there's some clues that there is some type of income rider associated with this case or the existing annuity. There's terms like rider fee with a deduction. There's talk about a lifetime income benefit with a benefit base and the annual income amount. A care benefit, which includes a nursing home or enhanced care benefit, an ADL enhanced benefit. So it's really important that when you are in the early stages of meeting with your client and determining, what type of money that they have, it's also important to understand all of the benefits and features that are inherent on that contract in order to fully ensure that you're understanding what's being moved. So Amy, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the Lafayette Life. Did you want to kind of go over this one and talk about, how the surrender charges are communicated on this particular statement?
And if you could go up, Jen, really quick, start at the top. So I missed the top part.
Sure.
So again, we have owner, we have annuitant, the contract type, and then as we move down, we can see that we have, a beginning account value, an ending account value, which has a difference of about, 33,000. And then there's a withdrawal charge of 12,000 if surrendered. And what Jen and I are looking at here is when you're looking at a beginning account value and an ending account value, and we have about a $33,000 difference, but we have, some interest earned, some withdrawals. Want to make sure that the beginning account value and the ending account value, what you're putting on the suitability form, makes sense. Now, all these statements might not communicate an MVA. Some statements do. Every company is different. So you're going to want to be making sure that when you are filling out the suitability form on page 3 for the comparison, that the numbers make sense. If you have a $33,000 difference, but only a $12,000 surrender charge, we're going to be asking you, where's the rest of the money? Why are there differences? So we want to make sure that you guys are understanding that the math works. If you don't, and you can't get it from the statement, those are things that you should be asking when you call the carrier, because you might not have a current statement. Maybe the client has a statement that's 9 months old. You want to be calling the company anyway to get the most current values, the most current surrender charges, making sure all the information is current for the time that you're writing the business.
Okay. So the next example we have is an Allianz statement. Amy, did you want to kind of go over this one as well?
So this one we picked out because again,
This
front
is
page.
the one I think that kind of it
MVA
more clearly communicates the MVA, and so
we can see protected income value. That's an indicator that that's got an income rider on it. And you'll see the value there. Then you see an accumulation value. And then it's probably, I think, on like the 5th page, there's the withdrawals, and then they'll say the amounts for single or joint payout if there's a joint optional. Then it gets into death benefit. And then when we get to this page, we see a cash surrender value. And then over on the column on the right-hand side, we'll see a full market value adjustment of 577, a positive. So again, we know that market value adjustments can change daily. They're not set like kind of surrender charges at a 6%. So when you see that on the statement like this, that there is an MVA, that is something that you're going to need to call again and get current MVA. And is it a positive or a negative? You have to ask whether that it's one of the two. This case, it's positive, but tomorrow it could be negative.
right, MVAs can fluctuate daily, so it's very important to understand that.
Yep.
Okay, and then here is an example that we pulled of a traditional life statement. And you'll see here in the very top, instead of referencing an annuitant, you're going to see insured, and then there's going to be owner. And the statement itself, is not as complex. So in this case, it's just your plain Jane, life insurance contract, but we thought it was important to call out the differences and how to be able to differentiate between a life insurance and an annuity statement by key terms such as insured versus annuitant, policy type, traditional life. And then lastly, we wanted to show you guys a, quote unquote statement that from time to time is provided that is really a transaction confirmation. And when you take a look at this transaction confirmation, while it does give you key pieces of information, such as who's the owner, who's the annuitant, issue date, contract number, it really only provides you with value information. It really doesn't provide the nuts and bolts of the contract or any of those contract benefits. So something such as a transaction confirmation, a fair value market letter, those types of quote unquote statements are not accepted. So we do need the more robust, more comprehensive documentation to review to be able to draw the comparison for suitability and best interest purposes.
And I want to make sure too, very clear that we need all pages of the annual statement. Because a lot of times we just get, 1 or 2 pages. We require the full statement.
Very true. Good point, Amy. Okay, so moving right along, and Amy touched on this already, is when a client decides they want to move forward and maybe transfer their existing account or existing annuity or life insurance contract, we strongly encourage that you as the agent get on the phone with your client and call the company to verify information such as ownership, tax qualified type, the account number. Is there going to be any additional requirements, such as do they need wet sign transfer forms versus an e-sign? Is there carrier specific documents that are needed? Do they need a signature guarantee? And then to go one step further, in cases of a replacement, sometimes that statement that you get from your client doesn't provide information such as your minimum guarantees or your current fixed rate, or maybe even the roll-up rate on the existing income rider. So it's really important to call the existing transfer company to verify some of this information, not only to be able to complete the paperwork, but for you as an agent to be able to confidently state that you did your research and your due diligence to determine that the move was in your client's best interest and it met their needs and objectives. And so one thing that I wanted to make sure that, we understood is that there is a few differences in which, a contract can be set up with with Emeritus when you're doing a Flexmark versus an Apex Advantage. For Flexmark, because of the underlying income rider, whether you're paying for one or going with the basic GLWE, the contract is written so that if you're going to do, a joint income and it's non-qualified, we have to have joint annuitants, joint owners. If you have a single annuitant joint owner, for Flexmark, we cannot manage that. Emeritus' system is not set up for that. So either at the existing company, an owner needs to be dropped or an annuitant needs to be added. And so with respect to IRA contracts, which, that tends to be the majority of our business, you're always going to list that sole person, sole annuitant, sole owner. And then for purposes of joint payout, you're just adding that person, which is currently Section 6 on the application. Apex Advantage doesn't have those same requirements. So we can have a single annuitant joint owner, joint annuitant single owner. So there's a little bit more flexibility there in the contract setup. So I just wanted to ensure that, we touched on that really briefly.
And you need to make sure the ownership is spousal only.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Legally recognized spousal.
Yeah.
Or federally recognized spousal is what I meant to say.
Yes.